Well, if you've been to an airport lately, especially in the US, then you know our commercial aviation system is a mess. And while it's true that high gas prices and weather have something to do with the hundreds of flight delays we're seeing on a daily basis, the biggest problem is that there simply aren't enough pilots. The United States is in the middle of its greatest pilot shortage in a half a century, and that has airlines and the government scrambling for solutions. But will those solutions make the safest form of transportation in the world more dangerous as a result? We talk about it next on Maximus. Greetings everybody, Maximus here. Well, the United States is suffering its worst pilot shortage in decades, forcing airlines to cut flights just as Americans are returning to the skies after more than 2 years of pandemic that crippled the airline industry. But now, as more Americans than ever are looking to take to the skies again, America has been hit with its worst pilot shortage in 50 years, and airlines are scrambling for solutions. Among some of the solutions being batted about is considering legislation that could raise the federally mandated pilot retirement age from 65 to 67 or even older. One regional airline has proposed reducing flight hour requirements before joining a U.S. carrier, and even more U.S. airlines are rethinking training programs to lower the bar to entry. And earlier this year, Delta Airlines joined other major carriers in dropping a 4-year degree from its pilot hiring requirements. During the pandemic aviation shutdown, pilot hiring was halted as training and licensing slowed. Airlines handed out early retirement packages to thousands of pilots and other employees in an effort to cut labor costs when travel demand cratered during the height of the crisis. One former captain for a major U.S. airline who took an early retirement package in 2020 said, "I feel like I walked away at the pinnacle." But as a result of the premature pandemic panic and layoffs, now airlines are desperate to hire and train pilots. But as we can see already this summer, they waited too long, and a worst-case scenario has arrived. And as a result, we are seeing hundreds of flight cancellations, leaving thousands of passengers stranded all across the United States. Major U.S. airlines are trying to hire more than 12,000 pilots combined this year alone, more than double the previous record in annual hiring. The shortage is particularly acute at regional carriers that feed major airline hubs from smaller cities. Mesa Airlines CEO Jonathan Ornstein said, "While hiring and retention bonuses have returned at those airlines, pay is lower there than at the majors, and they are recruiting aggressively from those smaller carriers." Phoenix-based Mesa Air Group, which flies for American and United, lost nearly $43 million in the last quarter as flight cuts mounted. CEO Jonathan Ornstein said, "We never fathomed attrition levels like this. If we don't fly our airplanes, we lose money." According to Ornstein, it takes Mesa an estimated 120 days to replace a pilot who gives 2 weeks' notice to go to another airline. "We could use 200 pilots right now," he said. Some carriers like Frontier and regional airline SkyWest are recruiting pilots from Australia under a special visa to help ease the shortfall. But still, the numbers are small compared with their overall ranks and hiring goals. Regional carrier Republic Airways, which flies for American, Delta, and United, last month petitioned the U.S. government to allow pilots to fly for the airline with just 750 hours, half of the 1,500 currently required if they go through the carrier's training program. There are already exemptions to the 1,500-hour rule, such as for U.S. military-trained pilots and those who attend 2- and 4-year programs that include flight training. But that proposal has received pushback from family members of victims of the 2009 Colgan Air Flight 3407 crash, the last fatal U.S. commercial passenger airline crash in the U.S. That tragedy took all 49 lives on board and 1 on the ground, was a pivotal event that ushered in the so-called 1,500-hour rule, implemented to ensure U.S. airline pilots have proper experience. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham is considering congressional legislation that could raise the mandatory airline pilot retirement age to at least 67 from the current age of 65. About a third of airline qualified pilots in the U.S. are between the ages of 51 and 59, and 13% of the country's airline pilots will reach retirement age within 5 years. However, in a Tuesday, July 5th interview, United States Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said he had no intention of raising the pilot retirement age, citing pilot safety. But pilot and other worker shortages have forced airlines to rethink their growth plans. JetBlue Airways and Alaska Airlines are among carriers that have recently trimmed capacity. SkyWest, for its part, told the Transportation Department that it plans to drop service to 29 smaller cities that the government subsidizes through what it calls essential air service. Service reductions could isolate smaller U.S. cities, but a pilot pay consultant said it could mean an opening for smaller competitors that don't rely on regional airlines as much as major network airlines. If they don't fly it, maybe a smaller airline will, he said. One of the biggest hurdles to bringing in new pilots is the cost of training. While salaries for wide-body captains at major airlines can exceed $350,000 a year, just getting qualified takes years. At ATP Flight School, the largest in the country, it costs close to $92,000 for a 7-month full-time program just to get the initial license. It can then take about 18 months or longer for pilots to build up enough flight hours, often by becoming flight instructors or just picking up odd hours wherever you can. In December of 2021, United started teaching the first students at its own flight school, the United Aviate Academy in Goodyear, Arizona, with a goal of training 5,000 pilots there by 2030. The company covers the cost of pilot training up to the point of receiving their private pilot's license, which it estimates to be around $17,000 per student. Other carriers have turned to low-interest loans or other initiatives to ease the financial burden on students. Okay, so let's go over some of the ideas the industry is considering. Raising the retirement age, dropping the 4-year degree requirement, reducing the flight hours from 1,500 to 750. While I can understand the thinking behind some of those ideas, I have to side with the Colgan Air crash victims' families when it comes to pilot experience. Because it was that Colgan Air crash that raised the flying experience rule to 1,500 hours in the first place. During the pandemic, over 5,000 U.S. pilots decided to retire early, and the airlines were happy to accommodate them. And that is a big part of the reason, at least for the foreseeable future, that the airlines are running low on qualified pilots. The pandemic seemed to turn once intelligent people all around the world into idiots, often resulting in knee-jerking and damaging results. So why the airlines thought that when the pandemic ended, they could simply replace the pilots they lost in an already depleted market makes no sense to me. But hey, what do I know? But I do have an idea that can help right now, and that is to hire back the pilots that were retired during the pandemic. Let them keep their full retirement benefits and hire them back at the wages they were making when they retired, in addition to their retirement. It's not a new option, by the way. It happens every day in America. Plus, you won't need to waste the time and expense to train them, and you will continue to ensure the safety of the safest form of travel in the world. I think at least that's a good place to start. And as for the other decisions they need to make to attract new pilots, well, they do need to get creative, I'm sure, but just not at the expense of passenger safety. Well, that's what I think. How about you? You know I'm always interested in hearing your ideas, so let me know down below. Well, that's going to wrap it up for now. Hey, and if you'd like to help support the work we do, the links are always in the description. And of course, if you think I deserve it, I'd love it if you would subscribe. And be sure to like, share, and ring the bell. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.